am I? On talkSPORT and on talkRADIO. Who are you? I'm Paul Ross. Who's the boss? Never you mind about that. I'm number 2, and we're getting information from you, from Van Connor, on your behalf. Because, Van the Man, I'm departing from custom and tradition. One of my selections this week is on Freeview. It's not a film, it's what I think is the best TV series ever made, certainly my favourite. We'll get to that in a moment. It's obviously The Prisoner from that Ron Grainer theme. However, how have you been? And you're starting with a great recent horror film, one that kind of really examines some of the conventions of the genre. Cabin in the Woods, film for tonight, 11:15. Be warned, folks, this is very funny, it's very scary as well. Good morning, Van.
Good morning, Mr. Ross. And you know what? I can tell you on the subject of things to come in next week, there's a Maurice Flitcroft biopic in cinemas that you will absolutely adore, starring Mark Rylance. So you look forward to that. It's called The Phantom of the Open.
Oh, he was the man he was the kind of golf impersonator con man, wasn't he, from back in the day?
He was. It is definitely a story unlike any other. I had a blast with it. But that's to come next week. This week, though, let's talk about The Cabin in the Woods, a sort of revisionist horror movie that sort of deconstructs the genre in a way kind of not really done before. Co-written by Joss Whedon with Drew Goddard, who takes on directing here. Wound up directing Bad Times at the El Royale as a follow-up a few years later with Chris Hemsworth. This follows, imaginatively enough, a group of teens who go to a cabin in the woods, you know, like they do. They go to the cabin. It's all creepy. They're all hormonal and alcohol fueled, and they want to play some truth or dare. You know, the usual.
Is one of them Paris Hilton, or is this not House of Wax from the early part of this century? It's that kind of setup, isn't it? It's standard setup of films like Piranha or whatever. And the ones normally the randiest don't survive normally.
You know the score,
yes.
Sir. However, this is all about subverting expectations. So I will tell you no more than that. Teens go to a cabin in the woods, and something just is not what you will expect. It's not what you will predict either. But I've got a clip for you from the less spoilerific section of the show. This is from the more traditional cabin in the woods element. So here's a clip.
Film for 11:15 tonight. Cabin in the Woods.
Truth or dare?
Dana.
Truth.
What's that supposed to mean?
Well, I'm just skipping ahead. You're going to say dare, she's going to dare you to do something you don't like, and then you'll say that you wanted truth all along.
Really? Okay, Jules. There. What the hell was that? It's the cellar door.
The wind must have blown it open.
That makes what kind of sense?
What do you think's down there?
Why don't we find out? Dana. I dare you.
That jump made even my team wake up at this unearthly hour. Good old film, this one. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. My recommendation is much earlier, much sillier. It's from 1963, directed by Stanley Kramer, whom people might know as a very serious director, who made films like, the Nuremberg trial film, Judgment in Nuremberg, you know, with great star cast about the Nazi war trials. He made them in 1963. He said he wanted to make he was fed up with all this social conscience stuff and realism. He wanted to make, he said, a big comedy. And he made, up to then, the biggest comedy as far as star power goes that we've seen on the big screen, with one of the longest titles. It's a Mad World from 1963. I won't give you the whole cast, but great stars like, for example, Sid Caesar turns up in it, Terry Thomas, who's brilliant in it, Hermione Gingold's in it, of course, everything's coming up roses, although they shouldn't sing in it. It's got Jonathan Winters in it. It's got cameos from people like the Three Stooges, Jack Benny and Jerry Lewis in just cameo parts. Milton Berle's in it as well, and basically, very simply, Spencer Tracy, Oscar-winning actor, basically, some people witnessed the demise of a gangster played by Jimmy Durante, who reveals where a big stash of his ill-gotten gains have been buried. And he just says something about the big letter W. And the people at first agree will all work together and divide it equally. And then it becomes this madcap chase across America. Mickey Rooney's in it as well. I mean, the cast is phenomenal, this, folks. And it is just a blast. It's one of those park your brain at the door comedies. It's at 1:00 this afternoon, BBC Two. I mean, it made a lot of money, this film. And it's kind of inspired films. There was one with John Cleese called Rat Race, which had a similar premise, which wasn't a bad film. But this is just the wonderful naivety about it, a silliness about it. It's very funny indeed. And I think I've got a teeny burst of the trailer.
The man said there was a certain amount of money buried down in this park.
Tell him the money is right here where I always said it was, right in this neighborhood.
Yeah? So what are you going to do now, huh?
In all my time in this wretched, godforsaken country, the one thing that has appalled me most of all is this preposterous preoccupation with bosoms. Hello, down there on the ground. This is us up here in the air, and we're in trouble.
Can't you see I'm talking on the phone? That's a police helicopter.
What's going on?
And it's where the forerunner films like Magnificent Men in Their Flying Machines and The Great Race and those kind of films. Terry Thomas, this preposterous obsession with bosoms you Americans have. Fantastic film. Absolutely, I mean, you know, it didn't rewrite the rules of cinema, but it's always made me laugh. It's a mad world. It's on this afternoon, 1 o'clock on BBC Two. Meanwhile, you've gone for a modern classic, I would say, on Channel 4 on Saturday night. It's not a fairy story at 9 o'clock. It's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Interestingly, actually, this is a movie. This is the most recent movie by Tarantino, obviously from 2019, heavily Oscar favoured as well that year. I think it went up against Parasite, wasn't it? No, it was went up against Parasite. The thing about this one for you and I, Paul, is that this refers quite heavily to The Wrecking Crew with Dean Martin, which you and I have talked about more than a few times.
One of his great Matt Helm films, another kind of James Bond spoof spin-off.
Yeah, exactly. So this is Tarantino's hangout movie in 60s Hollywood, all leading to a series of seemingly unconnected but tangentially connected storylines following seemingly unconnected characters that are all inevitably destined to intertwine somehow involving the events involving Sharon Tate's murder and the Manson family and Charles Manson. It's one of those movies that's populated entirely by a cast you could identify from their first names, which is a really interesting experiment if you ever try and do it. So you've got like Brad, Leo, Don, Al, Margot. You know, one of those casts. Like, you know you've got a good cast when you can do that. Absolutely steeped in the lore and the love of
although I must say,
Hollywood of the
deeply
time.
irritating, because when 50-year-old Brad Pitt takes his shirt off, if you're at the cinema with a woman or a partner, you're going to get the look. You know, seriously.
Well, I was.
You're going to get the look, aren't you? He's 50 and you're, you know.
Good job
you've got a good personality. You took a first date. You're a fool to yourself.
I did. I took a first date to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Not my best play.
Put your shirt on, Brad. Stop showing off. Okay, but it is a great film, and what's great is it's got a sense of dread, an ominous dread. But if you've not seen it, it kind of also subverts that sense of dread to an extent, doesn't it?
It has. It also gave us one of the great memes of the modern internet. It's got a fantastic performance from Leo, in which there is a moment in which a young actress says, "That's the best acting I've ever seen," and it comes after a moment in which you look at Leonardo DiCaprio and think, hell, that might actually be. Yeah. It's a really great movie that's steeped in the kind of things I know that you personally love, going back to, old westerns and the TV. Because of the 60s.
there is a theory, isn't there? I don't know what you think of this one, but that the character Leonardo DiCaprio plays in Django Unchained, the horrible slave owner, isn't in fact, it's not meant to be a real life. It's a film starring the actor Leonardo DiCaprio plays in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, if you take my meaning. It's a kind of weird meta thing, which is a fascinating notion, isn't it? Because Tarantino's obsessed with that kind of, layers within layers within layers, and it would kind of work, I think.
Absolutely. It would fit on brand because there's so much lore in the background of Tarantino movies that they can all feasibly be set in the same universe. Like Pulp Fiction could be taking place in a universe where Brad Pitt murdered Hitler. Yeah. Like that absolutely makes sense. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like I say, it's a hangout movie. It's more of an experience than it is a movie in its own right, which is very much in keeping with the kind of movies it references, things like The Wrecking Crew and things like that. Great performance from a very, very minor, but still a great performance from Margot Robbie as well as Sharon Tate. Very much capturing the essence of the woman. There's a sort of very uncomfortable moment where they sort of admonish Roman Polanski a little bit too much, but it's Tarantino on form, having a blast, hanging with his boys and girls in this case as well. Top tier of talent. It's always nice to see Kurt Russell back on screens. You know me, I love a bit of Kurt. And this is on 4 p.m. Sorry, Channel 4, 9 p.m. Not 4 p.m. Wow, that would be a strange time for this one. 9 p.m. on Channel 4, and I've got a clip for you of Leo trying to pitch Kurt Russell giving Brad Pitt some stuntman work.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Channel 4 tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Make sure you see it.
I got to look after my dudes.
Hey, and if your dudes were a better match for me, I'd say, okay, you got me. But that's not the case, and you know it. He's a great match for me.
No.
Hey, you could do anything you want to him. Throw him off a building, right? Light him on fire. Hit him with a Lincoln, right? Get creative. Do whatever you want. He's just happy for the opportunity.
Rick? Yeah. I don't dig him.
Great stuff. Very 1960s as well. Now, I've gone for my favourite TV show of all time. I was allowed to stay up late as a kid when it first came out, 66, 67. There were meant to be 26 episodes of The Prisoner, devised by and starring in some cases directed by Patrick McGoohan, who'd been Danger Man, John Drake. He co-created with a man called George Markstein, a great TV writer. Basically a secret agent, as I'm sure we all know, but I'll remind you, resigns. We never find out why, although a lot of people are desperate to know why, because the security forces of an unnamed country are keen to find out what he knows and what he's going to share. He's got no plans along that line, and he won't let them break down his individualism and individuality. He's taken to the village. He tries to escape. He can't. It's a magnificent 60s paranoia. I think it inspired series like Lost, which are all about the setup and they could never resolve, that kind of thing. And it's on, I'm delighted to say, the Horror Channel. It starts Saturday afternoon, 1 p.m. You're going to get episodes 1 and 2 this Saturday. They're then going to show them. Keep an eye on the schedules. If you set your record a series thing, you'll get all 17 of them. Let me alert you, the last 2 are absolutely astonishing examples of kind of TV spiralling out of control but still working brilliantly, summing up the 60s. There's nothing like them on television before and since.
But like Lost.
I love it. I mean, it's just such an absolutely filmed in Portmeirion in Wales. It's kind of entered the language of cinema and TV. They tried to remake it terribly. I thought it's a terrible remake with Ian McKellen. And one of the setups is, of course, every morning you see the credits and Patrick McGoohan wakes up still in the village and he meets the new number 2. He's number 6. He denies that. And that number 6 comes from 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, apparently. And there's an exchange, famous exchange, which lots of us can quote by heart. In this one, it's an exchange between Patrick McGoohan's number 2 and Leo McKern, Rumpole of the Bailey, as McGoohan 6. Leo McKern is number 2, Rumpole of the Bailey, and I think he's about the only person who played number 2 twice. He's in the penultimate episode as well, and the final episode, which are continuations, and in this one, and it's a cracker. 1 o'clock it starts on the Horror Channel. It's on that evening as well. What's not to love about this, Van? Would you say? I mean, it's just kind of mould-breaking television, I think.
Oh, I absolutely love The Prisoner. I've got tons and tons of books just all about The Prisoner. It's one of those things you could read and learn about forever and you still won't scratch the surface.
And there's a very popular fan club called the Prisoner Appreciation Society, or PROP. I've got to confess, as a student, I joined. Anyway, here it comes, the exchange, the opening. Where am I? In the village. But it's Patrick McGoohan, and only Patrick McGoohan and Leo McKern can deliver it.
Where am I? In the village.
I've seen so many online spoofs of that. I've seen one where somebody's impersonating Ray Winston, when somebody's doing Joe Pasquale, and it just works every level. So that's my recommendation. And then I'm going to go to my Sunday recommendations, and basically, very soon indeed, I can't remember the exact days, one day next week, Michael Caine, Sir Michael, will be 89 years old. God bless him. A man who's had an amazing and very, very kind of prolific career, and great exclamation mark classic pretty much all day are showing some of his, not always successful, but and sometimes great films. I mean, they're showing Gambit, they're showing Funeral in Berlin. Gambit's at 4:35 Sunday afternoon, great classic. Funeral in Berlin, the second Harry Palmer film, is on. They're also showing 2 of the later ones, not as good, Put It to Beijing and Midnight in St. Petersburg. They're showing Jigsaw Man from the 80s, film I've never seen, starring him and Glenda Jackson, called The Romantic Englishwoman. Have you ever seen that, from 1975?
I have not.
No, that's on great classic. So it's basically Michael Caine Day. Check out your great classic and maybe record the ones you've not seen. And you've gone for an ending with a rather different suggestion for 10 o'clock, BBC 2 on Sunday night. I should say, Sunday afternoon, I was tempted by on Channel 5, they're showing Big, but I think I've recommended that enough. A lovely film. What have you got for Sunday to finally wrap up our slot together, man?
Well, first of all, I'm disappointed that Without a Clue isn't on as part of the Michael Caine series. That's my favourite.
A bumbling Sherlock Holmes, that's a great film.
Is it Ben Kingsley? I think Ben Kingsley is Watson.
Ben Kingsley is the very clever Watson, and of course Michael Caine is the useless Sherlock.
Yes, that's the one. But I've gone instead for Michael Mann's 2001 biopic Ali, starring Will Smith, of course, as Muhammad Ali. This was Will Smith's, although it wasn't his first foray into more serious filmmaking, he'd done like a thriller with Enemy of the State. He, famously broken out with 6 Degrees of Separation in about 93. And of course, there was The Legend of Bagger Vance in 2000, which was more of a romantic drama about golf, of all things. But in 2001, he took the step into more prestige pictures, kind of like what we know him for now, really. This was his first foray away from what we came to define as the 90s Will Smith image. And of course, playing Muhammad Ali, obvious fit there because there is a certain level of charisma. He then defied expectation by starring in a version that didn't focus on that side of Muhammad Ali at all, and instead focused on 10 years of the most pivotal, politically active years of Ali's life, specifically his attempts to avoid induction into the draft, his fight against both the US government and the Nation of Islam under Brother Elijah Muhammad, his fractured friendship with Malcolm X, who's played in a wonderfully truncated but very effective performance from Mario Van Peebles, son of the late great Melvin Van Peebles as well. And of course, you know where this all has to end up, because it has to end in 1974, and it has to end with a very, very specific contest that I'm sure you know more about than I possibly
It's got to be the Rumble in the Jungle, him and George Foreman. And of course, that's brilliantly memorialised, if you like reading boxing books, a book by the Pulitzer Prize winning Norman Mailer, just called The Fight, which is a must-read for boxing fans. A brilliant social document as well.
Absolutely. And Chronicle, I think, did a really good documentary called When We Were Kings.
Oh, that's great.
As well. But I've got a clip for you. So this is on 10 p.m. Sunday night, BBC Two. I think it's a great movie. It's a little long. It's 2.5. I think it's 2 hours 36. I watched it last night ahead of this because I was recommending it for you. I thought, God, that's a good movie. I haven't seen it in years. It is even better than I remembered it being when I picked it for this. Somehow it was a box office bomb. I can't figure that one out. It got Oscar nominations for both Will Smith and a Best Supporting Actor nom for, of all people, Jon Voight instead of Jamie Foxx. Again, can't figure that one out. But the film's brilliant. Check it out, and it is, for my money, the definitive portrait of the late, great, iconic Muhammad Ali, realised perfectly by the perfectly cast Will Smith. I've got a clip for you of his infamous weigh-in with Sonny Liston and the press haranguing him as a result.
Well, he's down at the Louisville Lip, of course. Shooting from the Lip and the Hip is Van Connor. You can catch him in podcast form on Off Screen with Rebecca Perfect. Available from all good podcast providers. I believe dropping later on today, but make sure you get hold of it, subscribe to it. A great listen, and it's Ali's final recommendation, directed by Michael Mann, BBC Two, 10 o'clock on Sunday night. Ali Boumaye.
Cassius, you're a 7-1 underdog. He talks with his fists. What do you say?
You scared of him? I'm gonna give Sonny Liston talking lessons, boxing lessons, and falling down lessons.
Cassius, are you a black Muslim? Pat Putnam says in the Miami Herald.
Man's religion is his own business. What kind of question is that?
Angelo, tell me. Mr. Clay, the fact is, Malcolm X was in town, then he left. Was that so he wouldn't embarrass you?
Cassius, Liston doesn't like you. Really can't stand you. Says he wants to kill you.
Howard Cosell, you ain't nothing but an instigator. Man, how you get that way?
Cassius, now you're being truculent.
Well, if it's good, I'm mad.
The charm of the man, the charisma of the man, and the charisma and charm, of course, of Will Smith go perfectly well together. Huge thanks to Van Connor, though. Catch him on Off Screen with Rebecca Perfect. Great podcast. And catch him with me once a week on talkSPORT and talkRADIO. We're about to cross live to the Met Office for the weekend weather.